Shalom Israel. Did you know there was a time in history when Jews were expelled from 109 countries? Not just countries, the towns, villages, enclaves, cities, and even Catholic dioceses. And there was also a time in history when Igbos would say to one another, "Don't you know you are a Jew man? Yes, you are a Jew man. Go inside and change that shoe. You're looking like a Jew man." Hello, this is your high priest bringing you word on this beautiful Friday afternoon. Before I get into the video of today, the podcast of today, let me just make an announcement that one of our very own, Mr. Remmy Ilona, Igbo Jewish author and historian, was placed on a high pedestal this past weekend in New York City, where he participated in a roundtable conference with Jewish luminaries and distinguished actors and players in the Jewish community, not the least of which is Chief Rabbi Funeh, Capers Funeh, Miss Bonita, Nathan Sussman of Kulano Inc., and Jeff Lieberman, the executive producer of the Igbo Jewish movie known as Re-Emerging, Igbo Jews of Nigeria. And Remmy, gave a very good account of himself on that platform, for he articulated with such finesse the critical challenges that Igbo Jews are facing in Nigeria, as well as the complicated lens, the complicated ideological lens through which mainstream Jews see Igbos. Many of the mainstream Jews are still grappling with many philosophies, many worldviews, many ideologies regarding Igbo Jewish ancestry. Many of them, are not quite sure whether Igbos are Jews. I've read a lot of reports where some said, yeah, they're very, very enthusiastic about the Torah, but that does not in of itself make them Jews, whereas others have started seeing things differently. For example, the Sephardic Federation of America, convened this very pivotal conference entitled "Jewish Life in Africa," because there is emerging evidence that can no longer be denied that Igbos do have Semitic roots. Igbos are people of the book. Igbos are part of the seeds of Abraham. So I was very, very gratified. I watched it on, on Facebook Live, even though sometimes the audio was not very, very clear. But that platform was one that I considered a coveted one, in which only few select individuals were asked to participate. And Remmy Ilona, articulated, a piercing, poignant, powerful point of view regarding the way in which Igbos are facing, existential challenges in Nigeria, as well as, grappling with the issue of validation, affirmation, and recognition from mainstream Jewish, communities. But I think this particular conference, I think, and many would agree, is going to kind of break the jinx. Is going to begin to unravel some of the mysteries surrounding Igbo Jewish ancestry. So I thought I should slip this very important information in before I get into the crux of my today of my podcast today. Yes, there was a time in history when countries, expelled Jews. 109 countries expelled Jews, from villages, from towns, from cities, and some countries more than 5 times. They would expel them, and then they would bring them back again. And then I was asking myself a very critical question: why would these countries expel Jews? Countries ranging from Bavaria, people, cities from Bavaria to to England, to France, to England again, to Portugal, to different countries. Will expel Jews, and many of them will be expelled for good. But then after a while, the Jews are going to be, recalled. So when I was doing the research, I found out that every time there was an economic downturn in those countries, they will look for scapegoats. And the scapegoats that will readily come to mind will be Jews, because Jews have been blamed from the crucifixion of Jesus Christ to the economic doldrum nations have faced because of mismanagement, because of lack of financial probity in their national economic planning. And what they failed to understand is that without the presence of the Jews, it could have been much worse. And they will find that out once the Jews are expelled, and then the economic situation will become even more dire, will become even more, problematic. And then they turn around and ask the Jews, say, come back. And then as soon as the Jews come back, they begin to see a resurgence in their economic outlook. They begin to see socio-economic efflorescence, because the Jews are, blessed. They are anointed with, prosperous economic, management. They can manage economies. That's why in the United States, time and time again, we see Jews being appointed the chancellor or the managing director of the Federal Reserve, because Jews are the ones that are eminently qualified to be able to drive an economic program that will create jobs, create prosperity for everybody. So the funny part of the expulsion was that even a Catholic diocese would expel the Jews, because the Jews refused to renounce Judaism for Christianity. They refused to be baptized, and then that's why many of our Igbo forefathers, upon arriving in the present-day southeast of Nigeria, refused to be converted to Christianity. Many of them were beheaded. Many of them were, chased away. Many of them were exiled because they refused to, acquiesce to the notion of subscribing to any other religion other than Judaism. It was only the women that were, overpowered, overwhelmed, and conquered, in an attempt to convert them to Christianity. So, so you can see that all through, time, Jews have, faced, all manner of persecution from forceful conversion from Judaism to Christianity and other religions. When I attended the two Bishvat conference at the Venice Synagogue, which had a Rabbi, Rosenberg, Harry Rosenberg, as a keynote speaker. He did mention that in present-day Afghanistan, the Pashtuns of Afghanistan were once Jews. But, after the Second Temple fell, everybody was dispersed. They ended up in Afghanistan, and they were forced to convert to Judaism. And many who did not acquiesce to that demand of conversion were beheaded, or were, sent, to, dispersed to the mountains or other, places with inclement conditions. So you can see that the idea of Judaism is beginning to expand in scope and size. In the past, it was a circumscribed and restricted conception, to the extent that you have to have a blonde hair, blue eyes, and light skin for you to be considered Judaism. But who knew that people of Afghanistan, were once Jews, and now they have been discovered. And there was I think geographic magazine, or the Time magazine that had in a stunning photograph of a woman, clad in a Jewish, in a Islamic outfit with, piercing blue eyes. She's one of the Pashtuns, of Afghanistan. She probably was of a Jewish descent. And probably, her forefathers were one of those exiles that ended up in Afghanistan. The literature and historical texts have always created this narrative that after the Second Temple fell, many people were, after the First Temple fell under the attack of the Assyrians, all the Jews were expelled to Persia and Babylon. But increasingly, there's text that is emerging that Jews were dispersed to all corners of the world after the fall of the First and Second Temple. It was not just in Babylon. A lot of Jews ended up even in Pakistan. Even in places where there are Pashtuns and other Jewish communities. And of course, every time the temple was destroyed, many of the Jews will be taken into exile to different countries. And the ones that will be impacted the most were the elites, the intellectuals, the members of the intelligentsia, the scholars, the scribes, the members of the Levitical lineage. They were the educated class. They were the enlightened class. Those were the ones that would be, carried off into exile. You know why? Because every Jewish intellectual that is carried to Babylon represented at that time, socio-economic, technical, cultural leverage and advantage to the country where those individuals are being exiled. It was only the weak ones, the ones that were, the indigent ones, the ones that were not enlightened, that were, left behind or beheaded. But for the most part, every time the temple was destroyed, the intellectuals will be rounded up. And also it happened during the Nigerian Civil War when, the Igbos were defeated. The Igbo elite, the engineers, the technocrats, the teachers, the journalists, the doctors, they were all eliminated in order to make sure that the uprising did not occur again, because there was a rule of thumb that it was only the elite, the educated class, the engineers, the doctors, the professors that will articulate to the ones that are less educated the idea of revolt, the idea of secession. So they were the ones that were eliminated first. Every time towns and villages were conquered, all the elites, the professors, the teachers, the journalists, the doctors would be exterminated first. That's why, at the end of the war, all our teachers, all our professors, all our doctors, all our journalists, all our elites were nowhere to be found, because they were eliminated, they were exterminated, and that's what has always happened throughout history. Similarly, every time the people destroyed the temples, the first and the second. The first was destroyed by the Assyrians in 836 BC, and the second by the Romans in 70 CE, and many of the Jews were carried off into exile. And this persecution continued over time, to the extent that 109 countries, cities, communities, towns, villages, and even the Catholic diocese expelled Jews from their territories. And then another issue that I want to address is the issue of the way we were when we were growing up. Because I remember when we were growing up, it was a term of endearment for us to say to one another, "You are a Jew man." And this was back in the days, and there was no other community in Nigeria. There was no other community in Nigeria that would say such things to one another except the Igbos. You are a Jew man. You are a Jew man. Now, I started thinking to myself, was this just a frivolous, trivial, trifling axiom, maxim that, we articulated to one another, or did he point to something, something fundamental and intrinsic? What were we saying to one another? You are a Jew man, when it was unbeknownst to us that we were Jews. And then I found out that we were saying this to one another because our forefathers were hearkening to us. They were gesturing to us. They were betokening to us. It was the way they betokened to us. They gestured to us. They hearkened to us to always remember our Jewish ancestry, our Hebrew ancestry, our Israelite, lineage. That was the way our forefathers hearkened to us. They betokened to us. They gestured to us. They gestured to us not to ever forget our Semitic background. So that's why, it should have attracted some kind of opprobrium, or people should have taken umbrage to being addressed as a Jew man, even though Jew man was it was a term of endearment, even though it had a connotation of one who is unenlightened, one who has not been molested by enlightenment, one who has not been well educated, one who is not sophisticated, one whose sartorial standard was not acceptable, but yet we saw it as a term of endearment. Igbos would say to one another, yeah, go back in there and change that shirt. You can't go out with me like that, you Jew man. So that's the way we spoke to one another. And then you begin to think, why were we talking to one another like that? Was this just something, trivial, trifling, or frivolous? Was it a trifling axiom? Was it a trivial maxim? Or did it point to something that is fundamentally existential? Was it a way we kept alive our Hebrew and Jewish lineage? Was it a way that we spoke telepathically to one another? Was it a way that that our forefathers sent a sublime, supreme symbols of our Jewish heritage to us? And I would say, I think, and many would agree, that yes, our forefathers were speaking to us telepathically. They were sending sublime, supreme symbols of our Jewish lineage, of our Hebrew heritage, of our Israelite ancestry to us, never ever to forget where we came from. That we are the people of the book, were the seeds of Abraham, were the seeds of Israel, were children of Chukwokike Abiama. So I thought I should be able to slide that into my video today, and I've been receiving quite a lot of text messages, a lot of messages on our Igbo Jewish forum, which we set up barely a month ago. We have received over 70 applications of people who want to join. People said, "Oh, I like this forum. It's not just Igbos; it's white people. White people. Rwandans. Who did you know that there are Rwandan Jews? Jews also fled to Rwanda, and these people had relationship with Igbos. The Jews of Rwanda, especially the Tutsis. The Tutsis of Rwanda have affinity and familiar relationship with Igbos. Many of them are Jews, and there are Ugandans, Tutsis who are from Uganda, who have also joined our platform, and they say they're very excited. We're now learning a lot of Hebrew. The only Hebrew language I've ever known is Shalom. But now with this platform, I have increased my Hebrew I've increased my Hebrew knowledge. I have had a marked improvement in my Hebrew articulation. I know words like Mazel Tov, Shavua, and things like that, because everybody's bringing their knowledge, their Hebrew knowledge, and then into the platform, and everybody's picking up Hebrew slowly. So this platform is very, very important. I'm going to ask all the Igbos to leave those churches they've been attending and giving their money and join this platform. They're going to learn a lot of Hebrew. We're learning the Torah. Chidebere Aralu has been blessing us with the knowledge of Torah. There is something he wrote about the other day. I'm still trying to find it, about the kind of wine that is kosher, the kind of wine that we must use in our synagogues. I thought you could just drink anything, but with this platform now, I know that there are certain beverages, certain wine that are approved, that are considered kosher, which we must use in our liturgy, in our synagogues. So the Igbo Jewish Forum, even though it's entitled Igbo Jewish Forum, but it's a forum that is open to all Jews around the world. I have a lot of one individual that I met at the conference that I attended also joined. She's a Caucasian. She's Anglo-Saxon. She joined because she likes the platform, and a lot of people are joining. A lot of French Jews are joining, even though they don't have a stronger English language proficiency skills, but they're joining anyway. They just tagging along because they want to show solidarity, support to the Igbo Jews. I also want to give a shout out to brother Alan Rubin, who he's been very steadfast, sending us a lot of information about the things that are going on, regarding Jewish life in France. Sometimes he writes in French, and I gotta try to deconstruct, and reconstruct some of the things he's been, writing. And I want to really thank him. And I want to thank a lot of Igbo Jews that have joined the platform. I have about 12 people that are lined up for approval. Initially, I wanted people to introduce themselves, write about why they want to join the forum. But, after waiting for a while, I don't get any response. It's their birthright. I can't deny them, joining the platform. I still have to approve them to join in. Probably over time, they will begin to introduce themselves and they speak up about why they, why they joined this Igbo Jewish forum. I personally joined the forum because it's going to help me, understand the Torah in an existential and, supreme way. It's going to help me learn Hebrew. I can't do it on my own. A lot of people know how to speak Hebrew in the on the platform, so I'm going to pick up my own Hebrew, Hebrew words. Just interacting with the platform. A lot of people said, they joined the platform, for their own, for their own sanity, because they live in Nigeria. There's a lot of commotion. There's a lot of problem in Nigeria, and they wanted a place, a place that could give them succor. In Nigeria is becoming, a real problematic place. It wasn't like that when we were growing up. In Nigeria, we had a sense of nationalism. We had a sense of patriotism. Nationalism, patriotism, and to be clear, patriotism is the celebration of one's country in the light of its best virtues, values, and visions. Whereas nationalism is the uncritical valorization of one's country, regardless of its moral arc and trajectory. We have lost both of these components of our national life. And these components of nationalism and patriotism have been, replaced with narrow, provincial, parochial, values, where people see themselves more as Yorubas, as Christians, as Muslims, and lastly as Nigerians, where people now see themselves more as Hausa Fulani, as Muslims, and then finally as Nigerians, where people now see themselves as Igbos first, Jews second, and finally Nigerians. It shouldn't be like that. We should be patriotic. We should have a nationalistic fervor about our country. I know a lot of people are going to take umbrage for an Igbo Jew to even articulate, words that may tend to edify Nigeria. But what I'm just saying is that, Nigeria is becoming a complicated place. which shouldn't have been the case. But so a lot of people said, yeah, they find a lot of peace just interacting on this platform. And I try to read everything, even when I was hospitalized. I had to read everything. And by the way, I want to thank each and every one of you who prayed for me, who extended your thoughts and prayers when I was hospitalized. And I can tell you that I'm glad to be alive, because I thought I would have been dead, because I was very, very, very ill. And then when you go to these hospitals, they don't want to focus on the reason why you are in the hospital. They're gonna hook you up with all these echogram. Maybe that's not the name, but I heard something like echogram, monogram, this and that, all this gram and that gram. They hook you up on the chest, on the neck, in your buttocks, everywhere, and they start drawing blood and checking this and that. But I came there for abdominal pain, and I wanted them to focus on that, and they missed the signal. They missed the point and gave me medication for Pepsid. So now I had to, find a way to get antibiotics. Ever since I started, medicating myself with antibiotics, that's when I started to recuperate. But I want to thank each and every one of you who extended, his or her prayers and thoughts to me. That was very, very special, and that was very, very nice. So when I was in the hospital, I had a chance to read everybody's. Everybody's post. People were very kind, and they were writing very nice things. They kept the light of the platform aglow while I was away. They were, Chidebere, one of the admins, was, sending in very important information about, about the way in which our homes are the most important places for Jewish life. Even before we start thinking about going to the synagogue or the temple, Jewish life must show itself. We must demonstrate our Jewish lineage in our homes, in our places of abode. Not necessarily in the synagogue, which is like a misnomer, because people always think where you want to demonstrate your religious sanctification or justification is in the synagogue or the place of worship, or the space where you you want to commune with your God. But it is true that the home that offers you the sanctuary is actually the sanctuary where in which people must leverage their religious life. Not necessarily, not to say that the synagogue is not equally important, but the home must not be ignored. It's a very important place where we must also remember to demonstrate our religious fervor, so to say. So today's podcast is not going to be all drawn out. It's not going to be a long one. It's just, I'm going to use a very short time to articulate some of the things, some of the musings, some of the introspections that I've been, kind of, marinating with over this past week. So I wanted to give a shout out to Remmy for his very important performance at that forum, and then I liked the way he pointed out the way Igbos have been having a very fundamental existential problem in Nigeria. Because Nigeria is not the way it used to be. It's not like being critical to one's own country, and then he did point out that Igbos, are being hounded, they're being chased around, just for being Jews. So the issue of the Igbos, embracing Judaism is not even something new. Our forefathers have always practiced that religion. It's just that it was suppressed during the colonial period. Because after the temple fell, we made our way to southeast of Nigeria. It was a shotgun conversion. The conversion was not voluntary. And Christian conversion has never been voluntary. Well, when Apostle Paul, on his way to Damascus, had an encounter with a flashing light from the heavens, he was knocked off the horse. He was blinded for 3 days, and he was dragged and tugged along for almost 12 miles to the home of a certain Judas. And to rub it in, they took him to Judas. And Judas Iscariot had at that time had not betrayed his master. But it's still instructive that upon all the individuals they would take Apostle Paul to. It was one Judas. And it was there that his sight was restored after 3 days. So that was a very, very violent event, a very violent encounter, just to underscore that Christianity has never even been a peaceful religion. The Crusaders, the way they massacred Muslims and in the past, even in the Iberian Peninsula, where where the Muslims held sway in some parts of Spain. They even built their mosque and their palace there, and then they were trounced and they sent packing by Christians. So the idea that the Igbos are Christians is a misnomer. It's not even true. We have always been Jews, Hebrews, and Israelites. It's just the colonial masters that suppressed our people and handed us the Bible. But if you look, even with the Bible, we were always focusing on the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the Torah. That's what all our people were always reading. We were not even reading much of the New Testament, because there was something about the Old Testament that kind of arrested our attention. We were always reading the Torah, not even the New Testament. And even if we found ourselves in churches, we behaved differently from the other Christians. Like my own parents, they were not really very, very, very interested in going to church, even though they just had to go as a social activity. They were not going there for any religious or something that is really, really intrinsic and fundamental. They were just showing up just to show off their new outfit, their new sartorial standards they were setting at that time. So the Igbos have paid dearly even in Nigerians' own democratic experimentation. And then there's this complicated convergence between religion and tribe in Nigerians' democratic experimentation. And these existential fault lines have had far more lethargic consequences for the Igbos. Every time there is a religious conflict in Nigeria, Igbos are the ones who will bear the brunt. Igbos are the ones who will be more affected. There is an uprising in Denmark, far away Denmark. Igbos are the ones who are going to be killed. They're the ones who are going to have their, means of survival exterminated. Their businesses, their bosses are going to be burned down. If there's any clash, farmer-herder clash in Nigeria, the farmers and the cattle rearers clash in Nigeria, Igbos will be targeted. If there is any religious misunderstanding in Nigeria, Igbos will be the one to be exterminated. Because why? Because they are Jews. And similarly, even the Anglo-Saxon Jews of Western, Eastern Europe, are also facing the same fundamental existential problems every time there is a crisis. The latest one being the extermination of 11 Jewish worshippers in Pennsylvania. And there was no reason, just because they are Jews. So I'm trying to tell you that I'm saying to you, Igbos, that the crisis you're going to face just for being different is not over. You gotta brace up, because your enemies are still alive. They are still, looking at you. They are still, making their evil plans just to make sure that they, exterminate you. To be quite frank, that's the whole plan. So you gotta sleep with one eye open every now and then, because being Jewish is not an easy thing. It's very, very challenging. But you cannot run away from your heritage. We cannot run away from our lineage. We cannot run away from our ancestry. That's who we are. Jews have been, expelled from 109 countries. And some of the reasons for the expulsion is just laughable. Some of them were expelled for, in the opinion of of others, for doing much more better than the others. Some were expelled for refusal to convert to Christianity and other religions. Some were blamed for the economic downturn in those countries. Some were blamed for the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and there is no empirical justification for that. Some were even accused of blood, some kind of blood sacrilege, blood blasphemy, in which Jews were accused of killing a Christian boy and using his blood, for ritual purposes. And I get it. The same thing also happens to Igbos, where they are being accused for many of the ills of the Nigerian society. So this is nothing new. This is not a new condition for the Jews. They're going to be accused for this and that. So that's why you gotta always sleep with one eye open. And I want to give a shout out to Sister Chinumezu Mokon, maybe Mokon or Mokoni, in Johannesburg, South Africa. She's been very, very, persistent, very, very conscientious in our platform. I want to thank Sister Denise. She has a long, surname, Kagri Pundu. Yeah, I like that name. She's been very, very, very active on our platform. Every time there is an announcement or there is a notification, you're gonna see her, click, thumb up or make a comment. So I wanna really thank her, and I wanna also thank Bethel, Brother Bethel. You've been very, very active on our platform. I want you to keep it up. I wanna thank admin, Mr. Chidi Aralu. He's been blessing us with a lot of optics, a lot of information. I saw this nice picture of on the Ark, where the sacred roller scroll was neatly displayed in a red velvet dressing. I thought that was very, very special. I thought that was very, very brilliant of him. I want to thank many people that I can't remember their names on the platform, and I want to also encourage those who have not been very active to become more active on the platform, because I see that every time I post something, the Facebook software is going to indicate to me those who have seen the announcement and notification, but they are not making any comments. They are not saying anything. I want to encourage you guys to write a word or two, write something, just to keep the conversation vibrant, just to increase the level of participation. Because what is a Facebook group if people are not participating in the discourse? If people are not writing something that is gonna enrich the dialogue, just write something. You could have a dissenting, divergent, viewpoint. That's acceptable. If we're not gonna always told the same, line of argument. People might have their disagreement. it's not going to be offensive, it's so far so good. People have been very, very respectful. People have been, very, very focused and conscientious on the platform. We have not, had issues with people digressing or veering off to areas of endeavor that cannot promote our core values, visions, and virtues that we set up the platform for. People have been respectful. People have been conscientious. People have been making contributions, but we can make much more contributions because if we make our platform more progressive, more active, then it's going to attract people's attention. It's going to attract more traffic. People are going to start coming into our platform, and I'll be doing the research to know if if we reach a certain if we can reach a certain number of participants and members of the community, whether there's going to be any reward, whether people are going to start advertising on our platform. I'm doing the research because a platform like Linda Ikeji blog, she's making billions of naira just because there's a lot of traffic. So if we can get that kind of traffic, if we can get that kind of recognition on our platform, then we're gonna monetize it. We're gonna monetize it. We're gonna make money out of it. We'll pay a little tax to Facebook, and then we'll pay tax to the state of California and to the federal government, and the rest we're gonna use it to expand the Jewish life in Nigeria in different places. We're gonna start building synagogues. We're gonna start providing resources with our own money that we accrue from our platform. Even though it's still a little romanticism on my part, but anything is possible. If we're going to make this platform, strong, attractive, then we can monetize it. But I don't know how that happens, but I'm still doing research about how we can really, really increase traffic on our platform. Oh, by the way, I had a conversation last night, a phone conversation with brother Remmy Ilona. He is pursuing a PhD program at UC Riverside, University of California, Riverside. I'm going to be meeting up with him, I believe, toward the end of the month, because he's going to be traveling to Florida. I'm going to go pick him up and drop him off at the airport, and then we're going to further have an engagement, and then we're going to talk. We did have a very, very insightful, very, very strong, powerful conversation last night over the phone, and we were, talking about some of the challenges, some of the issues that tend to, fundamentally impact our, progress as Igbo Jews. We're not going to go back. I'm not going back to church again, ever again. I'm a Jew, and I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to rough it out. So should each and every one of you. So I was telling him the kind of progress we're making. A lot of Igbos and non-Igbos are joining the platform, and then we're going to be, creating other, interesting components of our platform. We're not just going to be, writing reflections and posting announcements. At some point, we're going to start doing things, in different locations where we are. We have, living in different time zones, in Johannesburg, in California, in Uganda, in, Kigali, Rwanda, in Nnewi, Nigeria, in Lagos, in Port Harcourt. We're going to, start having chapters where we can start doing things. I'm just praying for Hashem to, lift this platform up so that we can be able to monetize it, so that we can be able to use whatever money we get out of this platform to help our people, to build synagogue, in more synagogue in Lagos, more synagogue in Aba, more synagogues in Nnewi, more synagogues in Onisha, more synagogues in different places, more synagogues in Kigali, a synagogue in Uganda. We're going to be sending, people to, Jewish, experts to go and train our people, to go and teach our people the Torah, because a lot of people have contacted me. They say, well, I don't even know what Torah is. I'm intimidated by the Torah. So that's why I joined the platform, so that I can learn something. The platform can only do so much. We only learn from each other. We're not really experts like that. But at a point, we're gonna, find an avenue to send out experts, even amongst our people, who can go and teach our people the Torah, how to observe the Shabbat, how to, eat and use a kosher, meals, how to eat kosher meals, how to use kosher zitzit, kosher talit, and things like that. And then Sister Jasmine Marcotte, Shahot, Sister Jasmine, she lives out there in Florida. I think she wrote something about, kosher. How I can't remember exactly what she was. I think, a Chinese person was arrested for using actual dog to make hot dog, and then she said that's why people should be eating kosher, kosher meals, kosher meat. So, our people should also invest in kosher meals. It's not really very common in our place, in our country, because, we're still a re-emerging, even though Brother Remmy Ilona tended to disagree with me that we are not re-emerging Jews. But I know what I was talking about, that we have always been there, and that's true. But what I'm saying is that, a lot of our people have been in the church for so long, so it makes it look like we are re-emerging. We are not converts, but we are just reintegrating ourselves with mainstream Jews. So the issue of kosher is another element of our platform that we need to also reinforce, so that people will know what it is that kosher meat means, kosher bread, kosher this and that. So we're going to be touching on every aspect of Jewish life. We are not going back. This is our life. This is who we are. We are the seeds of Israel, and then we must embrace who we are. We're different. We're not like anyone else in Nigeria. We're different. We're Jews. We're Hebrews. We're Israelites. So now I gotta use all the three conceptions, interchangeably: Jews, Hebrews, Israelites, because a lot of people, they keep writing me, brother, we are not Jews, we are Hebrews. I say, okay, I like using the word Jews, but we are also Hebrews. We are Israelites. Why can't we have it all? So until I come your way again, this is your High Priest, Dr. Austin, coming your way. Thank you very much.